I'm recording this now on the night of the 11th, right after the deep state under the command of Joe Brandon made Taylor Swift's team, whichever one that was, win the Super Bowl. I don't think I'll be able to stream tomorrow. I'll be too busy celebrating the Super Bowl win. You know, I'm a very athletic type. I'm very, very committed to football as a concept, as an ideology. So I thought I'd cover this now. Israel has launched strikes at the city of Rafah. A quick catch up to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So obviously, right now, Israel is engaged in what it calls a war against Hamas, but which is I feel like you could very fairly call it a war of extermination with the goal of either eliminating or removing the Palestinian population. 30,000 or so Palestinians have died, and about 1.4 million of them have been pushed down at Israel's instruction to the border city of Rafah. That little red bit right there, keep in mind, this is not all of Israel. This is the Gaza Strip. Here's Rafah on a map of Israel. That's the Gaza Strip. It'd be a little red dot right down there. We're talking about an area so small, it is smaller than probably the neighborhood you grew up in. It's that small. 1.4 million Palestinians have taken refuge there. Before the war, I believe the population of Rafah was something around 200,000, which means that the already incredibly densely packed region of the Gaza Strip has seen its population balloon sevenfold, filled with refugees, many of whom can barely access potable water or dirty water in the case of a lot of them, many of them on the brink of starvation, women using scraps of refugee tents as menstrual cleaning products. I mean, we're talking about unlivable conditions deliberately inflicted on them as a whole, to their whole group. There must be a word for that. Conditions unlivable, inflicted upon a group, designed to make a continued existence impossible. If someone ever invents a word for that, you got to let me know. It'd be very convenient to be able to pull that one out. Now, the reason Israel has instructed people to go down there is because Israel has been, of course, conducting its ground war, whatever term you want to use, across the breadth of the Gaza Strip, and it is, at least for the moment, in the interest of Israel to get the civilians kind of out of the way. Plenty have died, remember, and have them huddled down here near the border with Egypt, the closed border, mind you, where they can be, sort of systemically denied aid and goods and what have you. For a while now, Israel has been prepping to extend its ground war all the way down to here, because, of course, no area must go untouched. There is no real plan to give any of this territory back to the Palestinians. Israel certainly won't elaborate on that plan if it does exist. And as long as, we learned this with the war on terror, right? If your goal is to eradicate terror, and you are, in fact, the institution creating terror, you are creating an unending war. There will never be an elimination of Hamas in a way that would give Israel the pretext to end conflict. It is an eternal battle, which, very deliberately, mind, can only be won from their side with the total eradication or removal of the Palestinian people. Anyway, right around the time the Super Bowl kickoff happened, now I don't know for a fact that this was deliberate, but it sure does seem convenient that Israel launched strikes at a designated refugee zone, killing many civilians, exactly as the most attention-grabbing event in Western canon, save maybe the presidential election. I don't know, it's the Super Bowl, takes place. But they did. Pretty much at exactly the same time, Israel launched strikes at Rafah. They say they did this to create a diversion to rescue 2 hostages. Now, this is remarkable. Israel has not been particularly good at justifying its actions here, but this is something else, huh? As a diversion. Here, you can read. Is it this one? No, from AP. Here we go. A series of Israeli strikes on Monday hit Rafah, the city on the southern edge of the Gaza Strip, where 1.4 million Palestinians have fled to escape fighting elsewhere. Right. Israel's been signaling its ground offensive in Gaza may soon target the densely populated city on the Egyptian border. What's this other AP article I have up here entitled Gaza mediators and others warn Israel of disaster if it launches a ground invasion on Crater Rafah? Who put that on my set of tabs? Who put that in my Chrome window? Anyway, Israel's been signaling the Senate. On Sunday, the White House said President Joe Biden has warned Netanyahu that Israel should not conduct a military operation against Hamas in Rafah without a, quote, credible and executable plan to protect civilians. Thank you, Joe Biden. As always, extremely hard line and commitment to the preservation of human life. The strikes hit around Kuwait Hospital early Monday morning, an Associated Press journalist in Rafah said. Some of those wounded in the strikes have been brought to the hospital. The Israel military said it struck terror targets in the area of Shabura, which is a district in Rafah. Terror targets. The military statement said the series of strikes had concluded without elaborating on the targets or assessing the potential damage or casualties. That's right. Israel just did it. Why did they do it? As a diversion. No pretext given other than terror targets. This is what America's blanket permission has given them. Not even a perceived need to justify when they launch strikes on populated areas. By the way, in case you're wondering, the Gazan Health Ministry estimates the number of dead at around 100. Even if you don't go by those numbers, and I don't know why you wouldn't, considering the fact that this was a set of strikes on an ungodly, densely populated area packed full of refugees, many of whom aren't even in structures, but are rather crowded in tents or just out there on the street. There's, at the very least, a dozen. I mean, not much time has passed, you know. The specifics will come in over time, though, of course, Israel has done everything in its power to cloak the Gaza Strip in the fog of war, preventing journalistic organizations from reporting on the heinous crimes they commit. Obviously, you know, one of the first things Israel did in this war was systemically strike deliberately the family homes of Palestinian journalists, because the fewer journalists, the harder it is to report on war crimes. Regardless of how many dead, it could be 1, 2, 10, 100. Every additional death is an additional tragedy, but no number of deaths more than one, detracts from the point here, which is that the pretext given that this would be done, that something like this would be done as a diversion to rescue 2 hostages. And good for them. Good for them. I hope those 2 hostages are doing well. Indescribably evil. I'm sorry, I words fail. That Israel would not even that they would not even dignify the dead with a dishonest excuse. That it would just be, oh, terror targets, whatever, diversion. I mean, who cares, right? Like, who's holding them to account, you know? Certainly not Biden, certainly not the U.S. It's sickening. And of course, that this is being done, which, and to be clear, you know, I, and probably no one can prove, nobody can prove, that this was done like right around the Super Bowl kickoff. But keep in mind, you know, I'm sorry, I'm jumbling my words together. It's quite late. It's impossible to prove the intent there that Israel would do this when they would assume so many people to be distracted. I don't know. There's not really any reason to assume good faith or assign charitability when it comes to Israel's behavior and its conduct over the course of this slaughter. So you can take from that what you will. It's awfully convenient, if nothing else. Look, right, as I've said many times before, Netanyahu, the Israeli cabinet, whatever, they have not expressed any kind of endgame for what's going to happen to the population of Palestine, because their end game is monstrous. And if they said it, It would sound really bad. The best case scenario is that they're so hopped up on wartime fervor that they don't know, and they're like a dog chasing a car. You know what? They're just gonna bomb and bomb and bomb, and what happens happens. Maybe that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is what I think is true, which is that Netanyahu and the people who stand with him in this campaign of eradication want all of Israel. They want greater Israel, mind. They want to expand the borders well past what they are currently, but that would be tough. So for right now, it's the Gaza Strip, and those pesky Palestinians have been in their way for a while. Hamas's attack on October 7th has given them a moral pretext to do what they've been looking to do for literally decades, which is completely resettle the location, and not just in a military occupation kind of way, but fully integrating into Israel, something they can't do while the Palestinians are there. So those Palestinians have been pushed into the city of Rafah, which is, again, so small, so densely packed down there. And now they're striking this with missiles. And they will conduct a ground war down there inevitably. And I can't imagine they pull back at this point. Maybe they will, but I doubt it. They'll start to muscle in on the city. And what then? Where will they flee? Well, it seems like the Palestinians are being pushed into a position where the only thing they can do is attempt to break south, to break into Egypt, to flee into Egypt as the unstoppable tide of IDF steel moves in, where they will either be gunned down or starved to death in the desert. Whatever. It's Egypt, a lot of it's pretty unlivable. Maybe some of them make it through. I really do feel like a fall is being set up here, like the classic two-man bit where one person puts a stool behind another, the other sort of lightly tips them forward and they fall over. I feel like the Palestinian population is being set up. Israel wants them gone, but Israel knows that as much as they've gotten away with, it would actually be pretty bad for them to just slaughter 2 million people. Straightforwardly. That would be pretty optically difficult for them to contend with. Perhaps not impossible, given what they've gotten away with thus far, but difficult. So if instead there was some kind of pretext, right? Maybe, I don't know, considering the IDF's been lying constantly this whole time, maybe the IDF makes its way down to Rafah and encounters heavy Hamas resistance, explosions, gunfire. In the middle of the night, attacks happen. There's panic and confusion. A great many Palestinian civilians die in the crossfire to Hamas, to the IDF, who knows. A lot of them end up fleeing whichever way, and which way can they flee to? Well, not into the IDF, certainly, so they flee in the direction they're not being shot from, at least not immediately. I mean, it's Egypt, and, now that they're in Egypt, whoa, this is a whole, news headlines the next day, Hamas caused panic, Netanyahu on the television saying, we tried to restore order in Rafah, but a terror cell of Hamas insurgents ended up spooking everyone, and a bunch of Palestinian civilians up and skedaddled into Egypt, and any number of bad things happened to them. And as for the Palestinians who didn't get spooked in Egypt, the ones who are still alive, well, now that the population of the Gaza Strip has been reduced so substantially, you might as well finish the job, right? Maybe Israel even graciously offers some kind of resettlement payment deal to the ones who are remaining, not as a way of accepting responsibility for what's happened, but just because they're so nice. And, kind of the way that corporations will create a fund to support some, humanitarian cause after they've been caught, I don't know, leveraging home mortgages to finance, a whaling expedition, whatever. This is all speculation, but again, I might as well toss ideas out into the wind here because Israel's been pretty tight-lipped. Everyone, even Biden, has been screaming at Netanyahu, do this, do that, ceasefire this, ceasefire that, please, God, anything but this. Have a plan. What's the plan? And Israel just hasn't engaged with that, It's like a person walking towards you, holding a knife. And Maybe they're your friend, and you think, okay, why are they holding the knife? And you ask them because they could be holding it for any number of reasons. Maybe they're like doing a kitchen thing and they're just like out of the room. They had to like piss real bad. I don't know. But they don't answer. So you say, hey, like, why are you holding a knife? They don't answer and they're approaching you. The unwillingness to give an answer is extremely suspicious, and I think warrants a complete lack of faith. Not, mind you, that if you're, I mean, if you're watching my content, you probably don't need this particular incident or anything I say right now to justify a lack of faith in the behavior of Israel and Netanyahu. But yeah, it's extremely grim. Again, this just happened in Rafah. We don't know the exact number of dead or what kind of wacky post hoc justifications Israel will construct, like the strikes were actually done with the greatest of humanitarian care, and everyone who died, if they even died, who did anyone die? Maybe, who knows? But if they did, they were all Hamas. I don't know. I don't know. And I feel like I'm waffling personally, but it's just so grim. It's so evil, and there's just so little else to be said about it. Look, this all ends in Rafah. The actual purging of the Gaza Strip won't end there in one day, but whatever Israel intends to do, whatever they think they can get away with, it will be demonstrated there. Because for a while now, the worst excesses of the IDF have been cushioned somewhat by the fact that there was always some other place for the refugees to go. And I suppose they could be directed out, across the sides here. But in practice, there are limitations, and so much of the Gaza Strip is just rubble now. So we'll see how it goes. But it's not good.